All right, let's get started. So, yeah, I'm Keith Lehman. I'm a Stevens Point native. My goal is just to be a facilitator and help other people have an impact in the community and in this world and help them do what they're trying to do. So, I'm here doing the podcast. I've got Trevor Drake. Trevor, who are you? How'd you come to be where you are and do what you do for this community?
Well, first off, I'm Trevor Drake. I grew up with Keith Lehman, Stevens Point native. Right now, I currently am, brand new, the executive director of Central Rivers Farmshed. Was the intern, served an intern for about 6 months. Came to Farmshed as the local food manager, and I guess I can get into that next as what Farmshed is, but what got me to local food is interesting. I really started, it's tough telling an 18-year-old what he wants to do for the rest of his life, so
Yes.
rushed into college, thought I was going to be a paramedic, and just takes a special type of person. Then I didn't know what to do. And right out of high school, I just, I knew I was staying in the hometown, got a job bussing tables, running room services, and that got me exposed to the world of food. So as I was going through, I would say the oblivious years of not understanding that food was going to be a career for me, I was just living life, learning lessons, doing what 18-year-olds should be doing. Just kept a really steady job. So eventually excelled in the world of food, found myself in management positions, leadership roles in food service, and gaining all this unique knowledge.
This is all pre-dietetics.
Yeah, this is all
okay.
I'm just a little punk at this point.
Yeah.
I think I had a 60% attendance rating, which isn't good in a tech. I wasn't going to class. Fuck if I did homework.
Yeah. Been there, my friend.
Yeah, once and it was to realize I wasn't going to be a paramedic I was working a practicum place in in the fire station, responding with paramedics,
Sure.
took one time seeing, I don't want to talk about it, but just seeing, somebody's life, on the brink. And I was like, well,
Something, very traumatic.
Yeah. And I believe those people, just that sector of our workforce, police, firefighters, paramedics, they deserve the best comprehensive mental health package the government could agree to throw together in Congress, right? So
I'll take your word for that. Fortunately, I haven't been exposed to any of that. I've heard stories from my cousin who's a firefighter down in Milwaukee, and he's seen he was at the fire station. And they, heard a bunch of booms going off outside here. He's from Stevens Point. He's thinking someone's shooting off fireworks, and everyone's yelling at him to get down because there's gunshots going off. So,
no, there's some pretty raw areas of America.
Yeah,
crime, true violence, right? But it just takes a special person. So once I realized that was it, you're young, you kind of feel lost. There's a lot of social pressure. There's a lot of want to party and not really be responsible too.
Yep.
Right.
There is that allure, man. I think that's just part of the process.
And I will say the one thing I hope to change in the long run is I hope to be a positive impact in the food service realm, the food service area of America. We're seeing it right now amidst this pandemic. There's that's the hardest sector right now in America to provide, keep jobs filled. There's restaurants closing down because they can't get employees.
And I think we're going to get into this. I'm very excited to unpack that and why localization is so valuable. And Give me a little bit about the Farmshed. What is the Farmshed, and what does that do for the community?
So, Farmshed was a very grassroots organization of just doing just that, installing a better grasp of local food resiliency and local food systems, for short, localizing food. And
in an effort to maximize sustainability,
connecting the consumer to their local farmer.
Sure.
Developing a stronger, a very simple way to put it is Farmshed was just developing more communication between why you need to support the hell out of your local farmers, right? That very grassroots organization. Awesome. Great people started it. And
is this a relatively new organization?
It was
for the area?
2007 is when, and by 2000 was when they did their first. It had a name. Food.
Tap in the archives.
Yeah, I'm struggling. Anyways, kind of, I guess, like their first, it was at MEJ's, which is a local, we all know MEJ's, a local coffee shop, and it was like a gathering of, essentially how it was simply described was people that were interested in the local food scene, the local food system, wanted to support small organic farmers, and not just organic, but diverse. And there, we can get into hilarious, what I think is just hilarious competition between farms.
Yep, sure.
Of that, because of that logo, and that's going to be relevant to how I view it, because I'm in a very interesting place of leadership that can be impactful. But anyways, like just the local food, regardless of the type of farm, just local food. 60 people ended up showing up to this coffee shop, which you can imagine filled the place.
Was this was an
in
exchange?
2007.
This was an exchange, or this was like a meeting of the minds for people just trying to put together something bigger?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that groups in 2007, they clearly took away a lot. Something that carried into a consistent effort of talent and time of people's.
Sure.
Until 2012, when they finally hired their first executive director. So almost 10 years old now.
Okay.
And it's, some big programs like the Growing Collective, which essentially is a group of 70 awesome people that believe in the concept of food sovereignty, that they put on a giant plant sale.
Can you define that for me? Food sovereignty.
Food sovereignty.
Yeah.
I guess the way I see it when I talk about it, and I mean, everybody's got their own little opinion on food sovereignty, but it's just kind of like taking ownership of your food.
Okay.
I mean, the food, I'm going to also just say my approach to food is I understand it's probably the most complex thing that humans deal with on a daily basis, 3 times a day.
Not just the like the supply chain and the means of allocating food, but also the implications of different foods and impact on your health. Like there's a lot there, and it's so important and prevalent in our lives.
It's intimate.
Yeah.
It's intimate, right? This is something that enters you. So I mean, emotions, huge thing that's underplayed in food.
Mental health, well-being,
all of it,
physical well-being.
It's going anything that enters you, right, is going to touch you on whether you think of health as 7 dimensions. Like a holistic approach to food is intimate, so it touches everything. So these people, 2012, we'll get a little back into Farmshed now. Local food fair. As I was telling you off the podcast here, that ever since the first one, which I believe was held in Spash, it's outgrown Spash's grounds, which is the local high school. It's outgrown Century's grounds, and this year it's due to COVID, it's going to be held outside at a huge city venue, right?
Okay.
It reaches about 2,400 people. Are the hard numbers. I'm not going to lie. I think it's going to grow in this new format, being outside, and we'll have some hard questions to answer. But that's just one great program. It's got the Growing Collective, which we were talking about, food sovereignty.
And so you guys do, like, as a synopsis here, you guys do, like, offer a lot of programs and even classes in some instances to the community, just like you said before, to help empower people and help them to establish a better relationship with food and their supply chain, that sort of thing.
Yep. Perfect synopsis. So I got into the food sovereignty thing, but yeah, that's Farmshed. It worked to serve local farms. Now, where it currently is and what it's doing is very interesting. Farmshed worked, and it allowed local farms to have a chance to grow themselves on the consumer market to the point where they've kind of, like, in all reality, outgrew us, right? They were awesome entrepreneurs. They capitalized on social media and how powerful that can be for communicating what you sell, what you stand for, right? We see like the power of social media, and that's great because that's what Farmshed started to do. You know, it started to grow these farms. So
it's interesting, actually, that you bring up social media as technology evolves and we're becoming more and more easily connected with the rest of the world. It's also easier to facilitate these connections that are close to home.
Exactly. So it gave them, like, a market to stand on. And so some of Farmshed's earlier programmings kind of grew to be irrelevant. And we're in the middle of defining, like, what we do now. And it's definitely going to change coming up in 2022. We're going to, now that we're past COVID, we're going to relook at education and being able to now have people coming back together. We'll be able to facilitate education, and it's going to look pretty dynamic.
That's actually, some of what brought us to this conversation was, like, talking about that.
Yeah. So, and I mean, we're still going to look to continue to evaluate how we serve farms. And this will also get into a deep part of what Farmshed can do with the resources that, you know, its success has accumulated over the years. But as me here, it's like we need to move volumes of this farm, of this locally sourced food. And we need to engage a consumer audience that values local source food, but also we're going to pull in a new market of people that are just looking to take small steps of how they can build food sovereignty and take more ownership for that food, whether that's through hunting, foraging, growing plants with the Growing Collective, understanding what a CSA is, understanding where to find local produce, how to, you know, source from local farms. On top of local food needs a place at the food security. You know, like these farmers want to serve a social justice issues in their own way through feeding people. And I mean, we can dive into that on how the current food security blanket in America it doesn't nourish people, it feeds them shit, right?
So I feel as though this is like leading into like, I guess the next question I want to ask you is, like, why is sustainability so important? It seems like there's some obvious answers to that, but I feel like you can really unpack that in a way that would be beneficial for people to understand. And along with that, I'll make it a two-part question. So why is sustainability important, and what are some of the pitfalls of commercialized agriculture, if you will?
So I kind of remember where I lost our conversation back when you asked me, like, what food sovereignty is, but I'm going to wrap it around back to that. why local is important is if you're talking about something that's going to, you and I, people we'll never talk to, every single human on this earth can all come to the common ground that we need water, shelter, and food, right? If we're going to live. When you put that commonality between all of us and need to serve that, right, just as society develops, and if you develop that service and integrate that service in an unsustainable way, you can think of just whether you believe in climate change or not. I think there's a lot to be said about the development of the earth that we live on for single crop usage and lack of the diverse landscape that really this earth started out as. You develop this whole system that the whole world depends on in kind of unfair ways to the planet. It's going to cause disruption
in ways that are detrimental to perhaps our longevity.
Yeah,
as a
species.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've really got to I've been fortunate enough, especially this last year, out west, to travel and see America, right? Like, America's a young country. We're a young country, and the one thing that separates us, in my opinion, from other countries is the fact that we have vast amount of land between us, right? Like, we go through states like a European goes through countries.
Sure.
That's a vast amount of land, and I don't know if we're really thinking about the value of that type of social, mental, like, just environmental factor on our everyday lives. That's remarkable, and that's why people want to come to America, right? That's part of the American dream. So just to see that degraded and to understand that a lot of that degradation is, the root of it is because of our agricultural practices. There's a lot to be said about that, and you think about some other things, that we grow enough food to feed everybody on the planet. We just have distribution issues on top of singularity, like wheat, corn, dairy. Those are, they dominate farm fields across America. That's not good. Like I said, there's a lot of species here. There's a lot of us here. There's a lot of delicate things in nature that depend on perfect balances. So
there's ecosystems would be better served if we didn't just plow every field to grow corn or
right. And why that's relevant is if we all want to make a change, we want to make small changes. And we're all at different places. Whether you are just picking up recycling, composting, maybe planting a tree on your land, in my opinion, the number one most impactful thing that we can do on a regular basis is vote with your dollar for a more sustainable system. So find that farmer, find that local food. Plus, it's exciting.
Yeah, I think we perpetuate whatever businesses we cast our consumer vote to, and that is with the dollar.
Yeah,
right.
Like ever since the Industrial Revolution, mankind's been dominated by how the dollar moves.
Yeah. So what? Why is that so important to cast your consumer vote to local? What pitfalls of commercialized agriculture are we trying to overcome specifically?
I think this is going to really be relevant and resonate with everybody. We saw grocery stores have empty shelves, right?
Yeah.
Your local farmer, the sun above him did not stop shining. Him or her, I apologize.
Yeah.
It didn't stop shining above them. Their plants grew. It's not like the pandemic caused a drought, right?
Food was produced.
You had the supply chain showed its its
vulnerability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. The supply chain showed how vulnerable it was, and I think that ever since that happened, like, everything's got a silver lining, and for a person with my interest, my passion in the field I'm working in, it honestly couldn't put together a better simple summary of how complex food actually is than just like that one example.
It's a great illustration to bring to the table.
Yeah.
Have you people forgotten
Like,
what we experienced?
what's wrong with growing almonds in California and for that to be or guacamole and for that to be a staple in your diet in Wisconsin? You know, like to really. And the one I think a simple way to look at it is, like, I think humans in general just need to get back to seasonal eating and what that truly means.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about that too. Like, do you feel that there's an ancestral, inherent, like, health benefit to eating foods that are like local to your region?
So in my time of studying dietetics and human nutrition at, an educated level, my takeaway was this: humans were designed to roam the earth and eat a wide variety of foods. Like, I think the perfect diet would be you'd never eat the same food twice in the same year.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting.
And that's not possible anymore, because there's a lot of complex issues with the food system, but this is a great example of how complex the food system is. Over the years, the decades, the centuries, not millenniums, but, we have lost. That's like losing the Great Alexander Library. We'll never know how many lineages and different edible plants and flowers we've lost. And I say edible flowers, but 65. It's a totally made up number. I'm gonna guess that you go to 10 people in Stevens Point and you ask them if you can eat flowers, only one of them will say you can, right? Like, just to think about all the knowledge we lost of how many different types of potatoes, watermelon, squash there actually was.
Here's a great example that I can bring to the table as somebody who owned a mushroom farm that we, very grateful for your help, in collaborating with me on that. Walking around out in the wilderness, I couldn't tell you what's, aside from like morels, I could identify oyster mushrooms because that's what we grew predominantly. But like outside of that, if you put me out in the woods and I had to survive on mushrooms, I'd be dead in a day. I'd eat something that's no bueno.
There's just a lot of food out there that we, like, the average American, because it's not on a mass commercial level, doesn't even know they can eat. And it's probably bigger than America's problem, as our other countries demand the American diet at a faster rate than ever.
And as we commercialize not just agriculture, but also, we're creatures of convenience for sure, right? And so when food is provided to us, it's all too easy to hit the drive-through because, we've got other things to do with our time, or because it's easy.
So with my host understanding that excellent thing, the convenience factor of our habit and our nature, I won't get into how that drives. That could be, if I had to pinpoint a sole reason, like, okay, Trevor, why is this happening? It's like, all right, because we're just so dependent and wanting of convenience.
And there's good reason for that. We live with all the, recent technological advancements of the internet, of social media, of the way we do business. We're being flooded with information, bombarded. There's constantly other people, other things demanding our time and attention. And so, unfortunately, to execute on all those things comes at the expense, in many cases, of our own health. And that's unfortunate, right? That's part of what drives you to do what you do.
Yeah, our diets, And I think if people want a really interesting book that really was pretty influential to me, I would read the book Tasty. I cannot remember the author's name. If you want to look that up in the background, we could get these people the author. But the book Tasty, it's got a great line in it. It says if the first bite, like the first predation of meat, would have never happened, humans, it's a book, humans would have never been able to create the internet. Meat is just such an efficient form of vitamins and nutrients. Without it, we would have been having to spend too much time just looking for shrubs and everything, foraging. So I'm
trying
not,
to obtain the same quality of nutrients, so like amino acids and vitamin B12 is one that's not actually prevalent in the vegetarian diet. Is that correct?
And so what that gets to is your point of like convenience in the evolution of how our diets came to be is fine, and it's something that I'm not gonna just say we should stop progressing as a species to go back to our ancestral diets. I'm not saying that whatsoever, but
there's different levels. Sorry if I can interject here. I thought of something that might be relevant is like Tom and I had discussed this. There's different levels to how we supply that convenience, and there's different like degradation of food quality depending on, like, I think the idea of like processed food has been overly demonized to some degree because all food is processed in some way, right? So there's food like pasta that's probably processed in a way that's not entirely beneficial. There's like heat processing, which may denature certain enzymes and nutrients, which is going to be super beneficial. But things like they sell these avocado cups, right? It's not the whole food. It's not like you're slicing an avocado and scooping it out. It's funny because all you have to do is slice it open. You've got an avocado cup, right? But I can throw one in my lunch pack. It's avocado. It's got like a citrus, like lemon or something as a preservative, salt, and I think that's it. Right. So, I mean, I'd be interested in your take. Like, how do you feel about the differences in processing, and like, is there a distinctive line that can be drawn where you should steer towards this? This is an acceptable form of processing. This is not.
I don't think local food is like, it is in the health wellness game, but that convenient packaging of that avocado is totally healthy, right? Like you brought up the fact that there's not a lot of salt in there and stuff. Why you should limit that intake of your avocado if you're in Wisconsin, you just got to think of all of that went into that avocado. Just that the harvesting from the farmer. The farmer then ships it off. It gets maybe processed two times before it's packaged. And in that plastic I'll never really agree that plastic is good for the earth or an okay thing to have around, and we should really start striving to limit our plastics.
Or that our food should be subjected to it.
Yeah.
Either. Who knows what it's leaching or.
And exactly. I mean, food's a very, tomatoes are super acidic, right? Like, if you want to think about it that way with what it sits in, and it's just that it's not like the health thing. It's just the overhaul, how we are stewards of the land that we live on, and why you should steer away from a product like that. I like avocados too, and I cook with them all the time. I make, and I buy them. And is that the most sustainable thing? Like Die Hard? No, but everybody's at different place. Do I know people that wouldn't dare touch an avocado because it wasn't growing around Wisconsin? Absolutely. Am I one of them? No. Do I think we all need to be that person? Absolutely not.
So this comes back to, you're bringing this back to like the importance of casting the consumer vote, and so your objection to that is more in the realm of supporting the wrong supply chain versus, like, you think that probably outweighs whatever a few degrees of health implications this way or that way. Is that accurate? Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
I don't think you should strive for local because it's going to make you a healthy, like there's no super diet. I can tell you that right now. Your body doesn't understand if it ate an organic pepper or a non-organic pepper. You might take away some pesticides and some poisons, you could think of them as, whether you decide that. But I think that's if you're trying to source it from a big box scale, right? Like Walmart. If you're walking into a Walmart and you want to go, what's got almost no chance of, there being harmful chemicals in there? Yeah, you can source organic, but the value of actually being that much closer to understanding where you get that pepper is going to make you a way healthier person than just thinking that you can not localize your diet. With a local diet, you will naturally be, that if you're inspired to come to food because you want to lose weight or be more healthy, local diets will just help that happen naturally, just because of what it has to be. I mean, back to this whole
the seasonality of food and
the seasonality of food. You just let that drive your diet. So when I was understanding the practice of dietetics and becoming a dietitian, I was like, well, really just like a simple message you could keep driving home is the fact that you should just eat seasonal. And you start to throw out packaged food, you start to throw out highly processed food, then you're just going to naturally have a diet. And if we can come to the common agreement that you can have a exercise plan, which I feel America is becoming a less active place, right?
Yeah.
That's still 25% of it. The bigger portion of being an optimal human is going to be your diet. So if you can start seeing that as a reason to pay maybe a higher price at a local farmer's market, then you're killing two birds with one stone. I got a little sidetracked there because when I think of that, as people tell me like, well, I want to do these fad diets, right? I want to buy these supplements. I'm like, why don't you just pay 20 more cents for a local tomato and you'll be doing yourself a better favor than adding the extra cost of those supplements to your diet. That was me thinking of it like as a dietitian. But
sure.
As the professional I'm standing at now, it's like we should all just be working like the everyday thing that we can do to like better the planet and take care of it better is just vote with your dollar better or get more connected to where your food came from. And
sure.
That evens like not just at a planet level, but like a health level, just to keep you functioning optimally. We should just start to get closer to our food chain.
So, I want to go in a lot of different directions with that. A couple of things that pique my interest are, one, like the fad diets and also how that intersects with like the seasonality of food. So, for example, like the ketogenic diet has become, very popular. I've heard dietitians tell me it's not super healthy. I've heard health professionals on all kinds of podcasts and stuff advocate for it, doctors and, things like that. Obviously, there's two sides to every coin. When you think about just kind of the natural paradigm, especially in a place like Wisconsin, where the seasons are so drastically different, we have an abundance of like produce and that sort of thing, in the summer and fall months of the year. And then as, we're in winter and spring, things freeze over and the state is not very conducive to producing things like that. It's actually more conducive to things like tending livestock, hunting wild game, producing milk and cheese, things like that, which are all more conducive to like a ketogenic diet. So that'd be the first point, I guess, the most pressing thing in my mind, like how do you reconcile that?
No. You think of that as, or I'm never going to agree with a health professional that tells me the ketogenic is all right to subject yourself to in the quest to lose weight. Because if you eat seasonally correctly, it's a hard thing to do. And what Farmshed does is provide education. To tie this back into what Farmshed is. For those of you that are still holding on to wanting to know what
We've drifted a long way, but there's a lot of interesting things to discuss. We're going to get back to that.
We'll get back to Farmshed. Why don't you pull the outline back up?
We do have the book. This is not the book.
No.
This is a book called Tasty.
Yeah.
It's not the book.
I'll pull the book and you can drop them in like the comments or the wherever.
Yeah.
John McQuaid right there.
Look
at that, people.
Perfect. We chanced on it.
Yep. We chanced. Yep. That's the book. And that kind of like the art and science of what we eat. That's a great book. And that book gave me the quote of, if we never would have taken the first bite of another animal, we never would have created the internet. It's in that book.
Interesting. Okay. So we'll get back to it.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. But so seasonal eating, right? The ketogenic diet eliminates a lot of carbs, right?
Do you feel like that's not particularly healthy in general, or do you feel like there's some level of exposure to, or
Well, your bodies were designed for it. Okay. I mean, I can establish a little bit more because I see coming down the line here up quick is hunting. It's right there. I'll talk about it there, but your body was designed to handle feast and famine. And when you're in famine, it needs a way to get carbohydrates to the brain. The brain's only...
Or energy, more broadly speaking.
Yeah. And, I mean, what your brain gets for energy is carbs. So what the keto diet, keto, comes from the word ketone, which is your body releases ketones from fat stores when there's not enough carbohydrates present.
Correct.
Right?
Yep. So
that's a survival mechanism. It's not an everyday functioning mechanism. You need to... And there's a point to be had about your body is meant to tap into the survival mechanism occasionally.
Metabolic diversity, I think, is the proper nomenclature.
Exactly. It's meant to experience metabolic diversity.
And we see that a lot in nature, right? Mm-hmm. Bears, they stock up on food. They eat a lot of food, and then they sleep for 6 months. Or at least that's how I've always... I'm sure that's not how it works, but that's how I've depicted it. They hibernate and feed on their fat stores.
Exactly.
Because even an excess of carbohydrates turns into fat as it's stored on the body if it's not being utilized. So definitely a built-in mechanism.
Exactly. You might function optimally on it in a short burst, but like no matter what a doc or what another health professional tells me, I still think that being in ketosis still doesn't make you an optimal human if you're going to do it over the longevity of time. So everything in moderation, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Exactly.
Balance.
And I can come to that comment so you don't drag out an argument.
I don't even think it's that. I guess you're the expert here. I know what I've read on the internet, which we know is always reliable. So I really I'm just curious about your take because I've experimented with a lot of these different things. I did a 5-day fast. I experimented with a lot of fasting, and it was an interesting thing because my energy levels weren't you wouldn't want to go do a workout. You wouldn't want to go lift heavy weights while you're doing a ketogenic diet. It's not. Carbs are much better geared to that sort of activity. However, when I was 5-day fasted, I'm not sure my mental acuity had ever been better. But again, I think you can extract from, I guess, how we operate as humans is like you would think that when you're without those carbohydrates that the body seems to prefer as an energy source, you'd want to be at peak mental acuity because traditionally, ancestrally, you're hunting and gathering. Like you want to be alert, right, to find your next meal.
Adrenaline's a hell of a drug, right? And so when you're starving, you're tapping more into your fight or flight responses.
Sure.
And your body's really, you know.
And I will say that my quality of sleep suffered.
Yeah.
At the deeper, like the longer my fast went on, first 2 days, not bad. After that, it was much more difficult to get asleep. And so it makes sense. I mean, it is a worthwhile experiment. It helped me learn a lot.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, like, calorie deficiency is part of a healthy, you know, in moderation, again, happens in a healthy lifestyle.
Sure.
Right? Like, and that's, I mean, what I think something also localizing your food chain, like, naturally promotes is just, like, when you really start to question yourself is, you know, should I be relying on convenience or should I take some more ownership and pride in what I eat? You know, you're just going to, back to like we were talking about, it's a busy world, right?
Sure.
And we're on the go, and
you have to balance those things out, right?
Yeah. And localized food isn't convenient.
You got people nagging you to do podcasts and stuff. It's like, well, I presume you didn't pick up McDonald's on the way over.
No, and you know what? A little bit of hunger's good for you, you know?
Agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's just like a nutshell of how deep I believe that local food can start to help us on all these complex issues in society. And
so big picture thinking, I mean, this is how I see it. Or again, I'm just trying to characterize like what you're telling me to make sure I'm on the same page. Big picture, it's more important to just have that healthy relationship with your food, with your community, that sort of thing, and is more important in terms of sustainability, big picture as a species, than it is to fret over this food or that food, or, you know.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So tie this all back to myself and how I ended up like at Farmshed and why Farmshed is something that,
and why you stick around.
Right. Stick around.
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of growth to Farmshed, and with growth, you're gonna, some people don't perceive growth the same way as others, and there's gonna be adverse opinions, but like that's essentially why I believe in Farmshed and why I think local food is a key avenue to, you know, really helping us tackle a lot of complex issues, even social justice. And that's simply because we all deserve to eat good food.
Yeah.
You know, and when you stop eating good food, when you put people and subject them to food deserts over a long period of time, something as subtle that you're not being truly nourished for mind, body, and spirit, it's going to play out in some like pretty bad consequences. And that's why I think that making sure good food is in all levels, whether that's in school cafeterias, in social safety networks like SNAP benefits, or, you know, any food security. I mean, I really do believe that nobody wants to be there, and it, you know, life's wild, right? You could hit rock bottom without even knowing it and need, you know, to be fed by something for a few weeks while you get yourself a new job or whatever.
Yeah. I remember, as a matter of fact, like when I was 18 and in that phase where I had no clear sense of where I was going or what I was doing, I moved out to Colorado for a stint, maybe 6 months, could have been less, and had no money. And I was scraping by eating. I was eating McDonald's because it was cheap and it was convenient, and it was probably better than nothing because it kept me going, but it by no means was optimal.
And that's why, like, food's the most powerful thing, I feel, that we can be influenced by. And if we change how we value it, whatever way you fall on that scale, that's going to be your legacy that you don't even realize you're leaving behind,
Right, yeah.
like degrading the West sagebrush like I saw this year out in Montana for a very large commercial drive for meat. And if you're a proponent to wanting more of that, those constant choices 365 days a year is going to be like what you leave behind for your children or the next generation.
Sure.
Like that's your legacy. I hope you counter that with, how you are as a person, but just know that if you don't really address and start to connect to understand where your food's coming from.
Yeah, that's a really important perspective.
You're really feeding into something. And I think organizations like Farmshed, like other organizations that I have the privilege to work with across the state and across the nation almost, they're important and should be valued because they're doing dynamic work, whether it's some of Farmshed's programs that drive volumes of food and provide more dollars to local farms so they can continue to grow, or education.
And this is a great place to segue from like the theory and the all that the tangential stuff we got into and into a more practical. What are some of those programs and classes specifically? Like, how do you practically help people to develop that understanding and relationship with their local food markets?
So, over the years, Farmshed's done just the local food fair offers a lot of education and exposure to what's going on. Over the years, there's been composting classes, beekeeping classes. Like I said, again, the Growing Collective is a group of people that does awesome things, and you can end up leaving there with seedlings or, growing plants for your own garden.
Yep, very cool.
CSA is, it's done that. I'm more excited about where we're going in 2022 because obviously the world's been shut down for a couple of years, right? Like bringing people together to educate.
It's like a reawakening.
Yeah. So
everybody's looking forward to that.
And that was the silver lining in the stuff that we're able to capitalize on Farmshed. So in 2022, we're going to have foraging classes, wild game fabrication classes. We'll bring back CSA workshops. We'll get, talks from indigenous people of how we can better respect the land, get more. We need to really start explaining and getting the underserved members of our community better understanding of the resources that they have, that they can make quality choices still, and we need to make this food accessible. So we've got classes with FoodWise, which is tailored to helping SNAP recipients and WIC recipients, educations on just eating whole foods and eating cleaner and how to simply cook with it so it's convenient as it can be. And that's just important because when you're in a social safety network, that's got a bunch of emotional and mental tolls coming down on you too. And if you're not nourishing yourself, how are you ever expected to get over some of the most challenging parts of life?
I agree. I think it all ties in together. I think you have to put yourself in the best possible position. And who, people have genetic predispositions that tie into their dietary choices and stuff like that can really affect them in a negative way. So I think that's incredibly important.
So we got classes, coming out for that in 2022, and we're taking a stab in senior health and, just building this local food. It's vibrant. You see the chefs now, it's they're really highlighting in their menu that they went to the farmer's market and they're getting these, awesome ingredients, which I'll say this, I spent a lot of time in the food world, right? Recipes, a chef makes you tell me a common dish.
Like at a restaurant?
Yeah, no, yeah. Just think of like something that you make that a chef also makes. Pesto, right?
Yeah.
You and a chef make a pesto the same way, same ingredients, right? He just gets a little better and times some different seasonings out, right? Like
He's got practice because of his repetitive
exactly
indulgence, yeah.
the local food scene provides you with those high quality ingredients that make dishes worth paying $60 for.
Sure.
You know, that's the only place you're going to get flavor. And back to seasonal eating, like that's why you eat it.
How drastic is like the price differential between, commercialized food? And actually, can I make this a two-part question
Yeah.
too? How drastic is the difference between the price and the nutritional content?
The nutritional content is like that argument favors in local food 100% of the time.
It's at least verifiable, even if the nutritional content's not great. You can know who's providing the food and what their practices are.
Well, even when you eat seasonally, you're picking the food at its peak ripeness, and when it's at its peak ripeness is when it has the most nutrients. If you want to break it down scientifically,
I do.
Yeah, so
love that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so there's that. So like your tomato that the farmer picked the Saturday morning before, or the Saturday of the Saturday farmers market, that tomato, you eat that is the most healthiest time for you to eat that.
And in terms of price, you mentioned the tomato earlier and 20 cents.
Yeah, no, I mean,
you're spitballing numbers.
Yeah, you'd really have to go to a farmer's market and look. I will say farmer's markets, they're going to be, it's an investment.
Could you give me like a, not necessarily like what's the price differential between the two tomatoes, but like how might that impact your pocketbook? If I were to, let's say I was like shopping only commercially, and then I switch and I decided, hey, I'm going to support all my local producers, get involved, subscribe to the CSA, that sort of thing. What does that look like over the course of a year, do you think?
Oh, I can't even say I have that number.
Yeah.
I couldn't even make an educated guess for you.
Too many variables.
Yeah, way too many variables. Because you can make local food really cheap. You can make it really cheap.
And obviously, the more people casting their consumer vote, it supports that system and, decreases the cost of that supply chain.
And then you're going to have to factor in your time, too. Because like I said, there's no local farmer that really has the ability to make more convenient food, and that's another program that Farmshed has to continue to tie this into Farmshed, our frozen asset program. And
also the CSA, right? Like this is part of what you guys do is make things more convenient.
Well, we educate on CSAs and how to get hooked up with the CSA and find a farmer. Our frozen asset program, and another reason why I love Farmshed is when I continue to talk about volumes of food, it's helping farmers move more volumes of food. Because we are a kitchen, right, that processes this locally grown food, turns it into a more customer-friendly product, and commerces that. So we pay these farmers and we're growing their demand, and that's just, if any organization is going to start to grow local food, we got a lot of work to do, right? And a reason that is, and I think this will start to answer your other question, why it's more expensive is because wheat, corn, it's all been mechanized so heavily that it's so efficient to harvest. That's good and bad. It's a double-edged sword. Right now, we have way too much moderation. We don't even have any moderation. We lean way too much this mass scale that it's clearly creating huge health consequences. Like, you see everybody can kind of like steer away from high fructose corn syrup, and that's just because
diabetes is a massive problem.
And what drives that? Simple sugars, which is just kind of like the food we find in packaging on the shelf. Is just all sorts of simple sugars manipulated in different ways to provide different textures and taste.
It's a product of trying to make things as efficient as possible and as cheap as possible.
So going back to local food, it's always whole. And that's why it's just so naturally like good for you, you know.
I'm gonna quote this is a little bit crude, but Tom told me this a long time ago. So going back to that, what I was trying to get at by asking you like what the price differential was is perhaps how people see that the differential's not quite that bad. You know, when you look into it, it's and the value you get for the nutrients is well worth paying for. I'll quote Tom Birnbaum, who said, you know, he told me a long time ago as he trying to help me transition towards a healthier diet. He said, oh, I'm sorry. Now I'm at a loss for the quote. It was, good food's not expensive. He's like, shit food is cheap.
Exactly. I can capture what Tom's trying to get. Do you want me to like?
Yeah, feel free to expand on that. Yeah,
like when you tell me that, I try to like, how do I conceptualize what Tommy B's thinking? Shit food is cheap, and that's just because when I say social justice, it's not just giving people that are struggling to get food good food. It's criminal how commercial food systems treat the farmer. Like, right, you're talking, you buy a tomato from Walmart, and that farmer maybe has gotten a penny of it, right? Walmart has gotten, you're going to spend $1.39 on a tomato at Walmart. Walmart gets a much larger, it's not even fucking comparable, such a more larger percentage of that $1.39 than the actual person that either harvested it or provided the land to grow it on. And that's another reason why like local food just starts to fix,
or even transported it, which has to be more.
We haven't even started on the economical impacts that local food provides, right? Like from jobs staying in the community on levels such as mine as an organization that wants to start bridging the supply chain gap and the educational gap of this system, to just like think about the farms. Think about like if these small diverse farmers got subsidized like our commercial growers did, and with those subsidizations they could provide, you know, $50,000-$60,000 farm manager jobs, you know, by like, and then the farm hands and the, you know, the entry level, like I can turn blue in the face on just the economical impact of investing in the local food and how much, you know, on why essentially that like will build you a better community, you know, like it will. But that is you could make this a 3-part podcast when you start factoring that in there.
Well, I think you could make that an entire podcast series probably.
Absolutely. And, you know, maybe you have Tom and I back together. We can touch into that because, as I understand, Tom likes to create good food. And Farmshed also serves that local food entrepreneur and somebody that wants to put their time into a little bit. I love the slow food movement, you know, like.
What is that?
So the slow food movement is just essentially it's addressing just that. If we think of less convenience and more of a like seasonal eating, right, is you're not going to have a tomato all the time at your disposal. You're going to have to understand that there's going to be some months of your life where a tomato is just not a fucking option.
You may not get spaghetti when you crave it.
Well, if you grew enough tomatoes or sourced enough tomatoes in the, you know, in the season they were
canned
and preserved them, you can have spaghetti all year round. And that's, you know, and I understand that battle. And that's why, like I said, Farmshed meets people across the spectrum.
So like you said before, ideal would be eat the tomatoes when they're in season and not more than once a year, but that's also not practical. We've got to balance and reconcile that a little bit.
And I see hunting's coming up next, so you might as well put that down there because I think we're at a good segue point.
Yeah.
So you might want to drop in the questions.
Oh,
there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, go ahead with your point, and then I'll take it from there.
Yeah. So to wrap up, we can just finish this because we got a few more points to get through, and I got to stand up and stretch.
Sure.
Not to host the show on you or anything.
No, man. Hey, this is your show as far as I'm concerned.
So
I'm a mere facilitator, my friend.
So Farmshed, we dabble in all of that, and the experience you're going to get with Farmshed is going to lead you to be a better steward or a more sustainable, friendly person. And you're going to make those changes through your stance on food. And we have classes and programs and services that can meet all of the dynamic that we've just spent the first 45 minutes going over.
I don't want to prolong your stretch, but can I just throw in a specific example?
Yeah.
So Tom is a mutual friend of ours who he actually produces a product that, you've had some Tom bars, right?
Mm-hmm.
He does Tom bars, and his goal is to provide like the most nutritionally sound and like healthiest bar on the market, right? Like as a convenience option, because Tom is also not big on the convenience thing. He knows that, eating well and, locally and all that sort of thing is convenient. So anyway, Trevor and Tom have talked about the opportunity for Tom to, chase his dreams with that potential company, and that comes in the form of a commercial kitchen, which is something that the Farmshed can offer to local entrepreneurs by precluding the necessity for them to have their own commercial kitchen, which takes a lot of the expense out. It's kind of a fixed expense, you would say. It's an hourly rate or something of that nature. I'll let you elaborate on that. I suppose the ins and outs.
Oh yeah, so as I was saying, in Farmshed, just have services, and we're really trying to provide any way you can almost conceptualize growing the local food system, and even serving entrepreneurs like you're speaking of, like Tom. That's like what Farmshed does, and that's super important to have in your community, because the battle that all of those farmers and people like Tom that really care about where food comes from and how it gets there, and the equitability. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Equity. My fault. That's through it all. That's through the producer, the farmer, even the transporter of, that works for these local farms, or in cases like Tom's that I see with seeing the entrepreneurs in the food business that really take a stance on sourcing their products and giving you those unique products. Like, you don't get the Stevens Point sauce company's like sauce across the border, right? But it's delicious, and I'm glad it's in my life. You find those things in local food, and they need supports. They need resources, and that's what Farmshed's there to be on that level too, just like it's meant to be a resource to our farmers. Now, some of we have to program. Some of it kind of follows this puppy principle, where we offer our resources to the community. And if you have an idea, like Tom or other, maple syrup producers and stuff, you can come into our kitchen and use our resources for a fixed rate. And that's so important, because you think about a person that wants to do that on the side of their day-to-day. We all got a little side hustle going on,
Sure.
Like, you need that in America, unfortunately. If somebody wants to express that through food,
it's only bettering the cause.
Yeah, you're only bettering the cause just to have that type of resource there. And that's that. I got one other huge program. I was kind of intersecting it, trying to interject it in here. I was going to save it for hunting, and I still will. So
Okay, yeah, let's do a little quick intermission.
Yeah.
We can top up our drinks
Yeah.
and stretch and. So
this is unreal. So cheers.
yeah, let's keep it going, man.
Yeah,
Cheers.
This is great stuff. Great scotch too.
Oh,
Like
Lagavulin. We'll expect a Lagavulin royalty from this.
Lagavulin. Yeah, no. The fact that you had a peaty scotch, which was Lagavulin 9-year. I hope this becomes a paid partnership for you. But it's damn good scotch. I just want people to know.
We're gonna get that in the Farmshed. Driftless Glen too. Like I just want to plug that too. In the spirit of talking about localization, the Lagavulin is from Scotland. So we're not honoring our that principle in that sense. But the Driftless Glen is from a distillery in Baraboo, and it's very good.
You catch a lot of great steelhead fishing in Baraboo. Love it.
Oh, nice.
Love steelhead. Great fish. Great fish to catch. But the spice trade and, the spice trail, the old, I think it was before Christ even, where traders pretty much went across the entire, Asia. It's what bridged the Neanderthals to the Africans, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying local needs to end all be all. We're meant
Sure,
to be
yeah.
exposed to the world around us, but you're right. Driftless Glen, also in Baraboo. We could use some paid partnership.
I love the way you think. Not to get us off track. So that actually raises an important question: is like this is actually should have been part of the first segment. Maybe we won't put it in there, but I'm gonna ask you for my own purposes. Are there like when you talk about like eating seasonally and locally, are there like local are there deficiencies like nutrient vitamin deficiencies like in certain regions that it is like better to outsource some of your intake?
Absolutely. Um, absolutely. And I think in the world we live in, and actually this is great. This is great. In the world we live in, yeah, it does pay to be like, if you can't, I think physical activity is the most underprescribed medicine. So to say that, or to, if you were asking me what do I do personally to combat that, it would be like, I just make sure I stay physically active.
Okay.
And obviously I'm a person that I'm very conscious about sourcing locally, but I also have been in the food industry in some not so sustainable realms where I appreciate a lot of different types of food that you can only source, you know.
Give me an example. This would be fun.
Well, you buy shrimp. That's probably like when I really think about the one thing I cringe at that I do is I buy shrimp. And that's just for a lot of reasons. The practices of farm fishing and, well, the travel time that shrimp, like we're in Wisconsin right now, right? Like there's no shrimp nearby us.
So yeah, you have to wonder like how are the conditions optimal when it's being transported? Is it being heated and recooled and heated and recooled?
Well, that's what the USDA and the FDA is for, you know, to make sure that facilities that handle that shrimp have codes to abide by.
And how do you feel like that? Like,
I think it's really, really good.
okay,
Like, I mean, God, food is so fun to study because if people, I'm sure, shoot, I can't believe I'm blanking on this. So there was a article, or yeah, it was published in the New York Times, and it might have actually been a book. Anyways, there's this. I am actually embarrassed for forgetting this document, but there's a very popular document that explains the meat processing plants in Chicago in the 20s, and those were some dark days. Those were some dark days of no food safety, people's fingers getting turned into ground hamburger and sold on a computer.
yikes!
I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of that. Shoot. I'm sure those listeners to this that will know exactly what I'm talking about. But also, another cool thing to study about food that I love, and I'm just starting to study more, is the life of like some early chefs and like, you know, middle-aged chefs, or not middle-aged, like chefs in the Middle Ages with kings and queens in Europe, and like just if you look at where food science and actually just like culinary practice started to be documented, like these people, these food workers, it's never been glamorous. It's never been glamorous.
Sure.
They were in the basements of castles and like
It's glamorous now.
Yeah,
Chef Gordon Ramsay.
Well, yeah, I mean
That's just a product of our culture. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail your point.
You're sore. I mean, it's still cancerous, and I was going into earlier where I hope I make an impact in my life of steering, you know, making a positive impact, because restaurants, you know, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. There's drugs, there's alcohol. It's high pressure. Everything's really tense when you're trying to appease a consumer. So,
I've worked at country clubs where the chefs were like alcoholics, drinking the cooking brandy on the line, just trying to cope with their lives because you're putting out so many plates with every steak's got to be just perfect. And
Yeah, man.
In that sense, it's not glamorous. Yeah,
No,
I
and
agree.
you're being judged by hundreds of people a night. Like, it's never been.
You got the foodies, the food critics out there.
Yeah,
You see that episode on South Park? Well, the food critics trying to get like free meals and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm on the edge of giving you a 5-star review or a 2-star review.
It's so true. Like, it's never been glamorous, and it's been, before they understood ventilation, those chefs were just like the
Sucking
carcinogens.
fumes. Yeah.
I mean, you burn outsides of steak, and we desire that, right? That's still a carcinogen.
Right.
It's still like a burnt cigarette.
It's very tasty carcinogen.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Not good for, not great for you, but
anything burnt. But
sous vide. How do you feel about sous vide?
Love it.
Okay, so you commented on plastic before, and Tom and I talked about this. So how do you reconcile that? Because it seems like such a great method for cooking.
I know it is. It really is, and
it seems optimal from a health and consumption standpoint, minus the plastic.
Well, I've actually never thought about it from a health standpoint because, what it does to the flavor of food. And in my time of studying dietetics, I realized that, we've been exposed to totally toxic parts of the food chain system for so long that, you can mitigate the effects, but you're really depriving yourself in a quality of life, letting that drive you. I will say that, 5-star restaurants, you only get that flavor from sous vide food. I'm actually one to keep kitchen gadgets out of the kitchen. I hate all the gadgets that exist.
You will shun my Instant Pot upstairs.
Yeah, I'm not. I just love everything about it. Having just your stove going.
I've got cast iron and pans and stuff like that, but
I like the oven heat and stuff, and I do a lot of Dutch oven cooking outside over campfires, which is the end all be all in my elitist opinion.
And you're a essentialist.
I'd say if I could get a goddamn break on some home insurance, I would just convert my oven into a indoor fireplace.
A stove, yeah.
Yeah, so I could actually
stove.
have wood. I'd love to cook, but
that'd be awesome. I know somebody in Point who has that, and they do cook like that.
I swear to God, when I get a house, I'm gonna get a they're made in Austria. They're the wood fire stoves, but they have on the upper deck they have an oven built in.
Oh yeah.
So I'll have.
So you're heating from below. You're heating a compartment up top,
and then they're designed for cooking. It's an Austrian design, or at least that's the company that makes those home appliances now.
Can I ask you about the Instant Pot?
Sure.
Because that's like a newer innovation, right? But not really.
Very convenient, very effective.
Not really that new of an innovation when you consider like canning and packaging, storing food long term. A lot of people would consider that to be totally acceptable, right? When you're canning food and using pressure to preserve. In terms of cooking, maybe you can give me some insight here. I've done a little research on it before I opted to buy one. It seems like the pressure style of cooking keeps a lot of the nutrients intact, and is actually better in terms of bioavailability than like a slow cooker, for example. And then also the stainless steel is like the pot inside, which has, I believe, 2 like essential nutrients in there, the metals. So if you're leaching, at least 2 of the 3 are good for you and that you have to consume anyway. Thoughts? Get rid of it. Throw it out the window and cook on a campfire, you fucking modernist.
No. No, I like it, Keith. If that thing is gonna allow you to, e- eat more locally, eat cleaner, eat better, great, have it.
Again, different levels to this. Like, it's like, okay, fuck it, I can't use my Instant Pot. I'm going to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Use the Instant Pot.
Yeah, absolutely.
My God.
Like, if that's gonna motivate, and that's just like, we just need to be more accepting of like what's gonna motivate that person to eat on a more holistically beneficial level. Great, do it. The Instapot, great. And you know what? There's a lot of ancient practices that resemble the Instapot. I know in India, there's dishes you cook where you have a Dutch oven. For those of you that don't really know what a Dutch oven technically is, it's just a pot with a lid.
I'm gonna look it up for my own.
Yeah, you
purposes.
can get us the actual definition, and then that seam there, they put bread dough around it and seal it, so
Really?
it pressurizes in there, and then they know it's done when the dough that they using as an active seal is done, and that's an ancient form of pressure cooking.
That's quite innovative.
Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, okay, I've seen this before.
Yeah, you know what a Dutch oven is. So absolutely.
So you come to people like this is where you're at. Like if you can move 5% in the right direction, that's better than.
I mean, I'm just an elitist and like, but I have.
You're so far entrenched in the ideologies and the culture that you're a total Puritan.
I have
yourself,
so much,
but you don't expect that of other people.
I have so much practice in cooking. And I just love like.
That's why I was so bummed.
Yeah.
I was gonna open my kitchen to you. Like I did eat the backstrap, by the way. I was like, I felt bad for Tom because he came up for the poker game, got canceled because people were sick, and then he was like, "Oh well, I'm super stoked about this podcast." And then you had your meeting, and it was like, no fault of yours, but it was just like inconvenient. I'm like, Tom, I got a consolation. Let's wrap that backstrap in bacon and eat it.
Great. Yeah, no, I felt terrible for that. I was
no.
And Tom's like such a good guy. Like, man, Tom's just a guy that like when you miss an opportunity to catch, we're all busy now, and it's like when you miss an opportunity to see Tom, fucking sucks.
When we can carve out the time like to do this, I'm so grateful that we both have the time and that our schedules align because it is infrequent these days. Mm-hmm. We are busy, and when we're making healthy, important dietary choices and shopping locally, we become even more busy. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a good thing, man. I love this.
But let's
let's get back into it, huh? Yeah. What are your obligations? Like, I don't want to.
So I'm meeting with.
Don't tell me you got another meeting.
I do.
Tonight?
Yeah.
My God.
I know. But let's get into the hunting and stuff.
Okay, so, all right.
Because this is
kind of what brought us here.
This is going to really paint a picture to people, like, who I am and why. I'll just get into it. So, your first question here, everybody.
Okay, so this is what brought us to this conversation. Was I know Trevor's big into all of this stuff, localization and harvesting in particular. He's a big hunter, avid hunter, I'll say. I'm not. I'm more of a tourist. I had a buddy of mine took me out and kind of showed me the ropes a little bit, and we were blessed with a successful hunt. This is my first year ever. And so I was excited and, kind of opened up to Trevor about it, and we had a good conversation about it. And, we kind of got into some different viewpoints that we had, pros and cons of hunting. And for example, this is, we can kind of reiterate what some of this conversation looked like. I was so sore coming out of the woods. I was so excited to have my deer, and I cleaned it, and I took part of that process, and it was great. But between sitting in the stand and even things like messing with my circadian rhythm, being up at 2:30 in the morning to get out to Rochelle to pick out my buddy, and then dragging the deer out of the woods, and all these things, he loves it. He's fired up. I love to see that. My body was really hurt to the point where Joey asked me, "Hey, do you want to go back out?" And I was like, there's such a knot in my back from sitting the way I was sitting. I'm like, is this worth it? Like, I loved the experience. I loved the camaraderie that came along with it. I loved the idea that I was doing something good for the sustainability of our species. But I did not love how my back felt and how my body felt. It was incredibly beat down and sore. So, go ahead with, you had some great counterpoints to all that. So I'll let you elaborate on that.
Well, first off, how was it, man? Like, you still think of the moment? You still replay the moment in your head?
I do. I went skydiving earlier this year, and that was such a thrill that you just can't help but replay it. This was the same way. I was shaking, when I shot my first deer. I was shaking when I saw the deer. I can't believe I hit it.
I love it.
It's a very incredible experience.
Man, I really love that. And we could flip this podcast and I could get off an hour drilling you about this, but I think it's a good segue of like, that's why I think hunting's so important. And to tie this one more time, or I'll tie this whole podcast back to Farmshed because I'm just that passionate about it. But like, I really think I'm a great person to leave Farmshed because I think this is going to be very controversial to like my professional position.
Yeah.
I think the worst, if somebody came in here, held a gun to my head and said, Trevor, you need to tell me the root problem of society. Why are we seeing such a polar divide across the country? Like, why? I need it. I need the answer. If it's not somewhat legitimate, I'm going to pull the trigger. I would go, I believe the root cause is when the practice and the drive to sustain farming outpaced our hunter and gatherer ancestors and just the act of domestication.
Okay, we've got a lot to unpack there. That is a very, very interesting and nuanced take.
So, why I say that? If you remember, I said our bodies were designed to eat, like, almost not to eat the same food too often, right?
Correct.
Keith, our farthest dating back, like our oldest ancestor, what type of lifestyle did they live? Were they farmers or were they hunter and gatherers?
Ancestrally speaking, yeah, hunters and gatherers.
Yeah, that's what your body genetically was designed to do.
And adapted to.
And like, and when I say genetics, I mean there's a huge, and I think it's underplayed, is like the not just spiritual but the mental health that goes into distancing yourself from that genetic, like your roots of your genetic are your genes. You're meant to do that act. You're meant to suffer. You're meant to go through stages of feast and famine. You're meant to be a successful hunter and an unsuccessful hunter, and all the emotions that you have to process and that are meant to happen. You're meant to struggle for your food. Like, humans are designed to work, and I get we need to advance as a species, but we can't lose sight of like what we were designed to do.
Yeah. yeah. Wow, that's really deep. That point alone, so I can tell you were saving that to really get me on the podcast because you didn't make that point before.
No. That's just like, and that's just who I am. That wasn't to get you. That wasn't.
No, I know. Yeah. I was just making light, but no, that's a really deep thing because when you say like, we're meant to struggle for food and like all the emotional stuff and all that comes along with that, I see practicality in that. Like, I understand, the pain that my body went through, made my body stronger in a sense and able to go reenact that thing. And that stimulus that I sent to my body is being reacted to where the body's getting stronger. One thing in particular that I zeroed in on was like, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about taking the life of an animal. And I'm not talking about like a bird or something. Like, I don't know what it is about a deer. It's larger. It's a mammal. It's just like something that you relate to more closely. And yeah, there was this whole like emotional thing that came along with it. And I see purpose in that too.
Right. Like, food's complex and dynamic, and you can't stress that enough when you think about the influences on our diet and the impact that I don't think, and actually caring about food is still kind of new. Like, the practice of dietetics started in the 70s. Yeah, maybe a little sooner. Fortification of food started after World War I, when we noticed we were so behind the European soldiers, the development of American men, and we pinned it to folate. So that's when we first started fortifying food. I don't think dietetics came until the 70s. So, like, just the act of humans really caring to understand about food is still so immature. We don't have a good grasp on it, and that's why you once heard eggs were bad for you, but now you hear eggs are good for you, right? So
it's an excellent point. Broccoli, anything. Pick a food,
right?
Yeah.
So I like that's why this is such a ripe topic to be a pioneer in all sorts of different facets. Whether you're a doctor, whether you're just a very well-trained professional like me with a diverse amount of experience, it's just such a new study, and it's so, like I said, back to this intimate thing. It's just such an intimate thing and complex.
It's really two. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
It's really two different professions when you consider, like, the field of dietetics, and you consider, like, the field of biology, right? It's not just about the food; it's about how the food affects the body, and, like, which nutrients are essential, and all those things. And so it's a very nuanced conversation. It requires a lot of, I think, careful thought and understanding that, like you said, it's relatively new. We're still trying to uncover some of those things.
A lot of respect for the fact that we don't know shit about it. Like, right? Like,
The more you think you know, the more you find out you don't. Yeah.
And that's what, like, when I hear a professional of food and give, like, a professional opinion on food so passionately towards one way and not entertain that they're wrong, that's where I start to I think that's the biggest problem with the diet culture in America, is the fact that there's a million different ways to make $1 off it. Nobody really understands that we don't know much about it. Like, you look at an apple, and you understand that it's a lot of sugar, but you don't understand that it's made up of hundreds of compounds that we understand that are there. Our technology just isn't advanced enough to study them to the levels that we claim to think we know. Like, the fact that a fruit is white provides you with a bunch of beneficial properties that we understand they're beneficial and they're complex and how they interact with our genes, our blood, everything about us. We don't really know how they do it. We just understand that orange is a good color too.
We've identified correlations, but we haven't, like, parsed that all out yet.
No, not at all.
Okay.
So, like, that's just how complex food is. And back to this whole, like, hunting thing and why I think that
why it's such an integral part of what you're doing.
Yeah, and I guess to say that, I'm just trying to put it in good words, so bear with me, everybody. Hunting and why. So it's like, if I had to, like, make everybody in America like conform to me, I would be like, we're all hunters, and then the next step out is the food that you don't hunt or gather yourself, you have to buy from a farmer that, like, aligns with these crazy ideals, right? Like, that's essentially what got me to be so passionate about where I am with Farmshed. I believe that step of hunting begins to it entices more physical activity. It humbles you. Like,
Yeah.
It really humbles you, whether you harvest a life or miss a big buck. there's humbling aspects if you are in coming to the practice or the sport or whatever you want to call it. If you come to hunting with the respect that the goal is this is to provide food for myself, or not food, I mean foraging, hunting too. So yeah, I'm contributing to my diet in the same way that, I mean, there's no doubt the world wasn't as messed up when we were all roaming it trying to hunt and gather as it is now, as far as like developing extincting species. You know, like humans are really playing God right now.
So if you come with the respect, let me know if this is a adequate characterization, but like if you come with the respect that you're only ethically taking the life of another animal to prolong other life. That's how I would never hunt for sport, for me personally.
No, you need to be in that mindset. You need to understand, like, that's what's given humans the privilege to hunt. And I really mean it's a privilege to be an apex predator.
Right.
Like, it really is.
And such an advanced apex predator.
Exactly. And it's a privilege for me. And, you know, another humbling part is it's a privilege for me to have the means to travel, spend money on gas, weapons, gear, you know, like, it's just an all-around privilege. As we develop as a society, it's still a privilege to hunt. It's still a privilege to be an apex predator. And that's a whole type of, you need to acknowledge those emotions. It's just, you know, it's healthy to be humbled.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's things too that, you know, you go out in the woods and you could be in for a life-changing experience.
Exactly. It's wild.
There things like you take a bad shot. I mean, hopefully everybody's out there is taking ethical shots and taking only, you know, what can be deemed good shots. But I mean, you take a shot where you don't hit vitals and you injure an animal, and that's a very humbling thing.
And it's unfortunate, but if you continue to hunt, it's going to happen.
Sure.
And there's all sorts of make or break points of hunting. And that's definitely an experience that I'm very glad it didn't happen to you on your first year. I'm very glad. But like, if you continue to hunt, that, you know, I pray it doesn't happen. But there's a better chance than none that experience is going to go through. You know, you're going to have to live that.
Yeah,
and that makes you respect
exactly
everything about food even more.
That's the silver lining, is that you want to be, you know, you want to be mindful of that, and in hindsight, hopefully identify what you could have done better and be all the more ethical.
I love deer.
Sorry, I'm ringing.
No, you can.
I turned it off, but it's still vibrating.
Our whole afternoon.
No. I'm not taking a phone call. I'm not taking a phone call.
Part of the problem, but
we're into the hunting. Yeah. I know this is the heart of what you wanted to get to, and this is a lot of what I wanted to discuss too. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's
nothing can get you closer to your supply chain than harvesting the food yourself.
Nothing. And the struggle, the fact that, like, you might not have that if you're not successful. And that's all part of the emotions that make it such a healthy exercise, that I feel if more people embrace that, as I talked about, eating seasonally just as a natural way of figuring out the rest of your health problems, I believe that in the act of hunting.
Sure.
You know, like, if you engage in hunting and how it's supposed to be engaged in, you're just naturally going to be a healthier person and a more optimal human.
Right.
And that's why I believe it's like such a we can't, when you're talking about disconnecting from our ancestors, that's something that we can't really, we're starting to see the consequences of, like, what it means to disconnect from that root function of our genetics. Like we're starting to lose, or we've lost appreciation for the land and really like what it means to be connected to it. And I think there's a lot to be said to that. And when you want to talk about like, well, what can you do to connect back to that? Hunt, know your farmer, grow a garden yourself, and that's like where I'm coming from.
I love that. So to bring this like a little bit full circle, so we kind of talked about the the benefits of localization and that sort of thing. I guess this is a two-part thing again. One, I think there's importance in specialization. I harvest an animal. So for my first hunt, I did everything. I gutted, skinned, quartered, butchered, packaged, and whatever, sealed the animal, everything. I'm not sure I would do it again. I did it intentionally the first time because I wanted to be close to that process, and I wanted to take it all the way from harvesting the animal to the field to preparing a meal on the stovetop. The reason I don't think I would do it again is because I feel like, for one, it's almost more honorable to the animal in a sense. And I know this would come with time, but again, specialization. I can't be good at everything. There's somebody that can do that animal better justice because that's what they specialize in. They're very good at butchering. They're going to waste less meat. To me, I feel like there's value in that. This got so long-winded, I forgot what the second part was. Let me reference our notes here. Well, anyway, I forgot where I was going with that, so we can move along to the next thing. You mentioned when we talked before that this was a big part of like what you wanted to offer. Coming up with the Farmshed here, classes in hunting. Is that accurate? Information about how to be a better, more productive, more ethical hunter across the board. Go ahead and expand on that.
Yeah, so like your point of, I assume, so question for you, are you going to harvest another deer? And then if you harvest another deer, you're just going to send the packaging or the meat away to a professional meat processor and then have it returned to you in however you want it to be?
Yeah, so ideally,
and that's fine. I'm not putting you on the spot saying
no,
there's one way or wrong way or another.
Yeah, so to me, let's go back to the first point. Am I going to harvest another deer? There's only two reasons I would harvest a deer. One, I'm going to eat it. Two, I'm going to provide it to somebody else that needs it. Those are the only two reasons I would ever shoot a deer. Do I feel like it's worth my time to... I mean, we talked about this already, and the value of being closer to your relationship with food and the supply chain. In my head, I'm trying to, in real time right now, this is why I'm like so confused. I'm trying to reconcile that and the value in specialization. And I wonder if again, like ancestrally speaking, do you think there was specialization among tribes per se? Those who had a knack for hunting, do you think that they did hunting, or do you think they carried that process through like the person who harvested the animal? And feel free, I'm sure we're just operating on conjecture here, but do you feel like there's more merit to that one way or the other?
Absolutely, there was specialization, right? Like there was, from what I know, and I'm not a very big history buff, and we could be corrected, but from my understanding, the function of the hunter and gatherers, you very much had villages, right? Small villages, and you'd have the hunters, the finest and the fittest of that village, go out and hunt, and they hunted, and other people gathered or did whatever to make society run. So yeah, there's absolutely some specialization. In your case, from what I'm hearing here, is like you're doing like, as a person that hasn't sourced red meat from a grocery store in 5+ years now, you're it's awesome, right? You're contributing to conservation. You're buying a license that's putting money into the system that I bleed into, right? Like, and love.
Yes.
Right. And if that's where you're at in hunting and you just want to shoot one deer and you want to pay a butcher to process that, that's great, because now there's everything you've contributed to conservation and everything you've contributed to our local economy in that butcher. You know, like, that's great. And like I said, I'm an extremist. I have a very extreme person. I tend to be all in on something. And like I said, I haven't sourced red meat in 5 years. It takes a lot of like hunting and being efficient at that. And where it might have taken you X amount of hours, I can tell you that like from the time that I have a deer in my kitchen, I can break it down and package it and store it away in 2 hours.
That's very impressive.
You know,
it
like,
took me like a day and a half.
Like, I'm just like, you know, and I have my own system. I understand all of the cuts on that deer, what I want them to look like. Yeah, this past year, I wanted to put a ridiculous amount of ground meat away, and grinding meat takes time, but I enjoy it, you know. And
I didn't mind that process at all.
Yeah.
It was more the slicing and again, it felt hard on my body. I'm kind of a sissy, I think, because of the Lyme disease. There's certain, you know, things that, like, just my muscles get weak very quickly. It's a strange thing. So this is maybe kind of a fringe example or whatever, but like, I was standing there, like my upper back now hurt, like slaving over the cutting board, and maybe that gets better with time, and you know, you get more proficient at it. But just all the mental notes I was taking along the way throughout this first process for me.
I'm glad you were in tuned enough to take that many detailed mental notes of the first process. You know, it's like trophy hunting's cancerous. You know, people need to understand the entire process. That's why. And I know, like, some of my hunting partners don't even understand how to properly field dress a deer, but they've been shooting deer and have many deer mounted on their walls, right? And they don't even know how to take the guts out of them in the field. And you're just like, that's the type of hunting culture that I'm hoping Farmshed's programs can combat.
I love that.
You know, and that's like a little snapshot of Farmshed in the future and its take on hunting. It's like, for me, when I was in college and I first started understanding sustainable food systems, I didn't get into it through valuing the local farmer. And I got into it because I thought the act of hunting was just so much healthier that the next step was like, okay, so I'm like, being a hunter, fishing, gathering, that was the original localvore, right? That localvore diet, that's where it starts, and then you backtrack from there. So then it's like understanding my farm and where that food came from.
Sure.
And when I think about sustainable food systems, you can't ignore that first step of like what human bodies, what human beings were like. Essentially, however you fall on evolution, right? We evolved from hunting our first, you know, like we were hunting food first, whether that's in the form of hunting raspberry bushes in a wide open landscape or hunting a deer.
But even predominantly, like, you have to imagine that like the hunting of animals was like, that was the primary food source.
Yeah.
That was the bulk of your meal, I would think.
I mean, yeah, yes and no. Like I said, I'm not a history buff.
Well, you just, imagine.
I'm sure somebody is.
Imagine, well, I guess if you get onto a nice patch of raspberries, you can take home a lot of food.
Yeah, and that's something I've kind of like, I haven't done any research in, but I do wonder about how we're talking about ketosis and the keto diet. I do wonder like how often famine happened on the source of meat in those days, and like how like I do wonder like how that all played out. And I'm not going to pretend to even know I know where to begin, but it's like, okay, so how much of our ancestors were relying on tubers what they dug out of the ground compared to like how frequently did they harvest a deer. And I mean, you can look at how they harvested buffalo in the plains here, ran them off cliffs, had thousands of dead buffalo, and you can think of pretty good times of feast, but I don't even know what a time of famine looked like, so
Yeah, wow. Man, you really give me great perspective, because as you're talking to me about like tubers, I'm thinking I can't even begin to visualize like wild potatoes. To me, when I think potatoes, I think big fields of potatoes.
Yeah, and there's like...
That's how far disconnected we are.
Exactly.
As somebody who's like here in front of, somebody who specializes in this stuff, trying to learn about it, that's my conceptualization. That's not good.
No, I mean, and that's no fault of our own. It's just what happens when,
things go so awry.
when the farmer outpaced the hunter and gatherer, like I said, to swing this all back, that's the root of all of our problems.
That's going on your headstone. God forbid I see that. I mean, I hope I go before you do, but that should be on your headstone.
That's the root of our problems.
Or at least in the show notes.
Yeah, right. At least put it in the show notes, and I'll put it on the Farmshed website if they want to give me a blurb spot.
Yeah.
Maybe I put that in my employee description.
Have you considered doing a blog?
Yeah, actually, I have an incredibly talented individual working for us right now. And she has agreed to, like, we're working on a concept and some framework of how we roll out a blog for Farmshed in a sustainable manner.
Yeah.
Because often in the nonprofit world, we see like a lot of great impactful things happen, and then that person phases out of that position because there's not enough monetary support, and they're there through like an internship or some sort of temp government program, and they do all these great things, and then like they leave, and I have a hard time piecing together what that required to keep that moving. So we're putting together a sustainable approach for a blog, and that'll be in the Farmshed programs and classes.
Do you ever like pull in interns that you feel like, hey, this is like you're a valuable asset, like we need you to be here?
Absolutely. And I mean, I'll start plugging nonprofits at this point of the podcast. They do good things for communities.
Yeah.
But a community needs to invest in them, and that's two parts: my entrepreneurial drive and talent of communicating that and attracting that donors, but also just the community to have an open mindset of we should throw $10 a month at Farmshed because they can provide this type of development of our food system locally, and that's for arts and other things. And even more deep, I've been waiting to plug this. It didn't come out how I thought I was going to plug it, but it's here now. Our SHPOB program is one of the most meaningful things to me because
what is that again?
It's a food security program that we run. We serve meals every week to Hmong elders and Hmong school children with culturally appropriate dishes.
Okay.
And why that's important is all the complexity that, I mean, I'll simplify it like this, Keith. We loved our middle school Salisbury steak, right? We loved that.
I loved the spicy chicken and ranch dressing.
Yeah,
that was sure.
So if I dropped you somewhere totally foreign and told you to eat this stuff that you never heard of, you probably wouldn't eat very effectively.
Indian or Asian cuisine that I'm not very familiar with.
You probably wouldn't eat that. So
Great point.
This program is such a big community builder because we're starting to address, like, these people need help, but they don't need the help that
that we're accustomed to.
Yeah, like they don't like Doritos. They don't like
good for them.
Yeah, like they don't like breaded chicken, fake breaded chicken breasts. They don't like that, and they're being forced to eat it because that's what exists in our framework, and that's an example of how complex food really is that we need to start acknowledging. And like, you're not going to get that through some corporate scheme. You're only going to get that through a special niche group of people that right now in America, it just makes sense to function as like a nonprofit and, you know, try to provide these unique community impacts that a different community miles away might seriously be receptive to and invested in, or like not ready to accept. And to the point of like, do I see talent like that? Yes, and that's why that does great, impactful things. But to keep that talent around, and I guess I was kind of preluding to this as like, that's why it's important to actually like acknowledge and at least hear out the different nonprofits around you, or if you are in a fortunate enough position to like want to invest some expendable income, at least be mindful and see like what are good ways to invest. Don't just go throw it to the status quo of like the United Way or Operation Bootstrap or
whatever random tax deductible charity
that's
comes
really
your way.
That's really big and, you know, nationwide, and because you got to look at like, where's your dollar actually going, and like what type of impact around you is it making, or can you do that, you know, can you invest those dollars and actually see some impact that you see, kind of like the same concept of small government, right? You vote for small government because you'll see its results.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's important because it actually reinforces that habit loop.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know what, I'm going to contribute something. You give it to United Way or, you know, whatever, the American Red Cross, and you don't know what happens. What you know is that you saved a little money on your taxes because you donated some money. Here, you know, when you see the impacts, when you see somebody being helped, when you specifically realize the benefit of your contribution, it makes you feel good, and you should.
And you're building a unique service that, you know, like Wausau, Rapids, they don't have a farm shed, you know, like,
Yep.
So that's something you're investing in to like keep you interested in the place that you're living in, right?
Yep.
Like, and that's what I hope as Farmshed we start to do. I feel like we got a good, you know, opportunity because we're pivoted, we're positioned around food. We just need to pivot how we engage it and engage everybody around us at the different levels they're at. And I think that's why hunting really feeds into that, which will be very new to Farmshed. I'm sure it's very new for Farmshed to have an executive director that says, I think our biggest problem is when farming took over.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's new, but that's it's deeper, you know, to get to that.
We better burn this podcast. You're going to be demoted.
No. And
it's important. They obviously trust you with the
Yeah.
amount of responsibility that you very quickly have taken on. It's very impressive to see.
And I'll tell them that too. And I've been waiting for me to be in this position to tell them that. And I hope that brings value and actually strength and growth to this.
That is how it happens. We just talked about that. You need to challenge common beliefs, right? That's the essence of science, right? We try and learn things and push the ball forward by challenging what we already know. And so you can't get any better perspective than somebody like you in the trenches, living and breathing this stuff.
And I hope it resonates. And when you just talk about like the pros and cons to hunting right now, yeah, like I said, I acknowledge it's a privilege, right? Like you made the comment of, is it really cheaper? No, it's the most expensive form of free meat you can get. But why do you do it? You do it to just get back to your roots and really like experience life how you were supposed to experience and develop that respect for what's around us.
And not just pertaining to like the diet side of things. Like I mentioned camaraderie, and that aspect is important. Yeah. Think about like smaller, more tight-knit communities when, hey, if, Jimmy, Joe, Bob, over there shoots a deer, we're feeding the tribe.
Exactly.
It's
always been camaraderie. It's always been about seeing wild places, having life-changing experiences, whether they're life-threatening or just life-making. Like
I had a grouse like beeliner right in my head, the last sit I did, and I thought it was trying to take me out of the game.
Yeah.
It was really cool. I mean, it sounds silly. It was just a grouse flying at me, but like it was coming right for my face and then went maybe like a foot and a half behind my head, and it was just like I was just there in nature.
And so now you've developed, or I assume you developed that little bit more respect that you share the space with that grouse.
Correct, yeah.
And I think that's, like I said, I can't reiterate anymore the fact that I firmly believe that when that intimate connection, because hunting, you're a guest in all of those animals' homes.
We're in their domain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like when you start to favor towards farming of like, I kind of expect this type of production off this landscape, that's dangerous. That's a dangerous like habit or belief to feed into. And it disconnects you from like your ability to steward the land. And I know local farms and, their practices are more aware of that, but you're still disconnecting from what you were like really, how you were really meant to function. And once again, I'm not saying I'd turn the whole world into hunters and gatherers. Like, we were meant to progress as a species, but we need to be really...
Efficiency is important.
Yeah, efficiency is super... but, like... What's the Spider-Man? Every great power comes great responsibility, and you really need to start factoring that into like how we control our earth for food.
Yeah.
So I think that wraps up this entire podcast.
You've got lots of great quotes. I think really you did a good job of encapsulating kind of everything we wanted to cover here. We do have one little bit left.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to show and tell. You go first.
We've got a show and tell.
I've been talking too much.
No, not at all, man. You're the expert. Okay, so show and tell. As I alluded to earlier, I ran a mushroom farm. It was actually something a good friend of mine, Dylan Butera, turned me on to. He bought me a little mushroom kit somewhere online. I think Paul Stamets. My Host Defense, great brand, great company. I grew this mushroom on my tabletop, and it was just the neatest thing ever. I was like, wow, they grow in like 3 days.
Did it taste good? You eat it?
I did. Yeah, it was a lion's mane mushroom. Was the first one I ever grew, so I ate that. It said to have like a seafood kind of like lobster taste. The texture is incredible. It's unlike anything else. So anyway, I started this mushroom farm. Trevor and I had the opportunity to reconnect, after so many years, and that was very, very pleasant. We did some business together. He was able to contribute to some of the programs he had by using the product that I was producing here. So everybody knew I was into the mushroom thing. I became, the mushroom guy in a sense, and, the fun guy and all the other geeky puns. But my sister bought me this deck of cards. It's like a mushroom identifying thing. I don't know where it would be practical. Perhaps, if we were going on a mushroom foraging trip, we could play cribbage and really brush up on what we know. It's unopened, so I'm going to open it right now.
It's funny you say that. I was thinking cribbage the entire time.
Just eyeing these cards.
Yeah, when you pulled out your show and tell earlier, I was like... And you asked me, like, what can we do with them? I'm like, well, I could kick your ass in cribbage.
So I do have a cribbage board. You've got another meeting tonight, so we need to do this again very soon. We can do a quick hand, though, right? You got time for a quick cribbage hand?
I'll play a quick hand of
okay.
Cribbage. I mean, this next thing is just more of a social connection for a project we got going on. So there's a little bit of leniency. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Well, we'll try and keep it concise here. Yeah. I feel like we covered a lot of ground tonight, but I feel like there was a lot of value in the nuance that I think people get the gist of the value of the farmshed and what you're here offering to the community, and can pull a lot of that from the nuanced topics we covered. So,
no, I appreciate you giving me this platform. One thing I like about local is that, like, when you're working on local, it shines on all levels. So, like, this is a value in this local community people are invested in, Farmshed. They want to hear what's going to happen to Farmshed. So I definitely know this was like way more beneficial for me than and like if you continue with this, I really recommend you looking to the organization Create Portage County, because they can help you maybe put a little side hustle dollars to what you're trying to do here.
I am familiar, actually. Yeah.
Like they're a perfect nonprofit that can help you, like, really. I know Keith is a professional entrepreneur, so I could see, just having fun like this and your drive just to always kind of be, active and doing something. I could see this turning into a little side hustle. Like,
me too well.
Yeah, like what you're doing here when you explain to me like what you were hoping to get out of it, I was like, well, this just got. It was another work meeting in my mind, because I'm like, well, this just got way more productive, because, so I appreciate you having me on and giving me this platform to kind of like express
definitely
where we're at.
I want to be a unique podcast in the sense that I don't want to produce my own show. I just want to help other people on their path. I have a little, background with the audio equipment and that sort of thing, and I love the sound of my own voice. So, no, just kidding. But,
hell yeah,
what I do love is, like, getting together and affording this time to catch up with, old friends and see what other people are doing and just help them in any way possible. So this is really an ideal thing for me.
Well, keep with it, man. You got a great way to facilitate, too. I think you shouldn't sell yourself short on that, because podcasts, entertainment, it's all entertainment, and it takes talent and it takes energy if you're gonna get something out of it,
yeah,
or like make it useful. And you definitely did that, so
I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, but I guess when we upgrade the podcast studio for the new Layman Enterprise, we'll get a camera so you guys could actually see my show and tell. My show and tell is a incredible whitetail shed I found.
Trevor, if you don't mind, actually hold that.
Yeah.
Go ahead and hold that. I'm going to take a picture of you in front of the mic with that, and we'll go ahead and put that on the cover of the video.
But
technology is just amazing. We'll get the mushroom cards in there too, so we got both show and tell. All right, say sustainability.
Sustainability.
Excellent. Go ahead.
But this was just an incredible whitetail shed I found in Montana. It was probably in like north central Montana, the region I was in. And this would be a 14-point whitetail shed. And when you look at the picture, you'll see that the G1, there's two G1s growing. And actually, I'm not... it's natural human nature to like big antlers on animals. That's just kind of a cool thing. It's not what drives my hunting, but it definitely like helps me feel like I'm managing the deer and not just going shooting anything like crazy. So I like really appreciate big bucks, and like this is an incredible whitetail shed that I found because of these G1s. And I'd have to say
I know so little.
Yeah,
that's a unique thing.
Yeah, so I don't know an incredible amount either myself, but like antlers, they're scored right by measuring the inches of antlers, and these are tines, and they each have their own like special
like name or identifier.
Yeah, identification. So this is your G1, your G2, your G3, your G4, your G5, your G6. And you measure all of these and then the main beam, and that gives you a score. Well, everybody, on this whitetail, there's two G1s, and the weird G1 that's growing not in the main beam, so I think this would be called the abnormal G1.
Okay.
Is what do you think that is, Keith? Like almost 10 inches long.
This one here?
This one, yeah. Like from where it splits here. Like,
yeah, if you straighten that out, probably close to 10 inches.
Yeah.
Especially from the long, like if you take it from the long end there.
Yeah. So I think they measure them and they start like, they try to find they try to find the base of the tine. These are tines, right? Off the main beam. So, like, if you were measuring the length of this tine, you'd think it'd start, like, this is the main beam. So you'd put that measuring tape right here and you'd measure that. Too.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, I'd have to say, yeah, it's about 8 inches, everybody. If you straighten it, it'd be a good 10. It kind of hooks hard. But, so on my trip out west,
May I?
yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful. It was just dropped last year, so I'm positive that buck's still living and probably bigger than ever, because just not a lot of people in the area hunt whitetails. But so I had the opportunity to go out to the spot in Montana, and I didn't have any, like, I just bought an over-the-counter mule deer doe tag and a over-the-counter mule deer or white-tailed deer doe tag, and I was like, people are like, why are you taking your time going out west and not shooting antlers? I'm like, well, one, I like to experience wild places, and I like to travel America through the lens of hunting. So I'm still getting a return on my investment by bringing home meat. I don't need to shoot antlers, but I'm definitely going to learn this space, and if I want to go back to shoot animals with antlers, I'll know exactly. To say the least, I'm definitely going back because I saw a lot of mule deer there, like bucks.
Yeah.
And I hope to get a nice one there. Same with, I'm going to definitely pull a cow elk tag for there next year.
Very
so
cool.
I'll be packing my own elk meat out of the mountains. And, which again, my drive to do that's just like back to my ancient ancestors, my drive to work and suffer for that animal. And I look forward to carrying heavy packs of elk meat out on my back.
Yeah, you told me the last one you shot was such a large animal that you had to quarter it in the woods.
Oh, yeah, that was like an unheard of whitetail scenario in Wisconsin.
That was here.
Wisconsin, it's a bittersweet relationship between me and hunting with Wisconsin, simply because I love white-tailed deer and I love how prominent and successful their herds are here. I think our culture sucks ass because I don't think it's like, essentially what you're doing is renting out farmland or finding farmland, and you're walking, guys, I think the average is disgusting. People don't even venture 700 yards away from the parking lot or where they park their truck. So the fact that I got this whitetail, it was literally, I tracked it, and it was over a mile, my walk was.
Really?
So that's unheard of in central Wisconsin. When you get into the bigger Northwoods where you got national forests to roam, you can do that easily. But around like where we hunt, to get a mile away from where you park your truck's pretty hard to do.
Sure.
And people like, they really are like, what the hell are you doing?
Especially if you're on public land, because
Yeah.
public land, unless you're in like prairie chicken land, which is not ideal for deer hunting anyway, it's like little segments all over the place. Mm-hmm. There's little tiny, like 80 acres here, 40 acres there.
So this was a spot, it's pretty hard to get to, pretty remote. I was back there. Beautiful night. I think it's the first week of November. It was right when I got back. Like, I had an incredible, I went to Idaho, got a mule deer buck out in Idaho. I was out there for 2 weeks, just living in the Frank Church wilderness, and it was awesome. And then I came home for 4 days, went back out to Montana, got a whitetail got a mule deer, and was gifted some meat, and then this whitetail shed, and then came home. I think 4 days after that, I shot, which might be probably the biggest buck I'll shoot for a while. Like, this thing was easily well over 200 pounds.
This is the picture you sent me?
Yeah, it's the picture I sent you.
10-pointer, right?
Yep, 10-pointer. With,
beautiful deer.
Yeah, 18.5-inch spread, 10-pointer on public land. Deceased in a swamp. And I called my buddy's dad, Mark Seakosh, who is a true legend. He came out there with a cart, and I was thinking, like, all right, we could probably get him out of here on a cart, and the deer was too big for the cart. So we loaded this deer on the cart, walked them about 10 steps.
So this isn't going to work.
Realized this was not it. And I was like, well, you know, I do think quartering your animal up in the field and packing it out is just, it's easier on you than dragging. It really is. Now it's a little bit harder to keep the meat clean and takes a little bit more skill that way. But as far as like, you're telling me you were hurt about dragging the deer, get yourself a good backpacking backpack that can hold a whole deer in it, you know, quartered up, and I bet you your body feels better. So I was like, well, I just think I'll just quarter this thing up. I had game bags with me. I was all equipped still for my month in the West, and I was like, I'll pack it up. He didn't have a backpack, so I had to carry the whole deer, and he just carried the cape and the head. But yeah, I had all 4 quarters and then all the other grind meat and stuff. And
wow, yeah, that's much more skill than I have at this juncture in time.
Well, that's what Farmshed's going to be there for. Like, help
exciting.
People get to that
You guys going to process deer there?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's exciting.
When I was in grad school, my thesis involved putting together a wild game processing class that I ran. Actually, but Paul.
Are you well prepared for this venture?
You remember Paul Shabilsky and Josh Becken?
Yep.
Those guys actually, like, they really. When your profession's going into like creating programming, you're not really the one ever delivering the class.
Sure.
So like, I designed this class, and those two pretty much executed it. So like,
very cool.
I give them a lot of credit for my graduate diploma.
Oh, nice. So you could say in another way you owe them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about anymore. I feel I repaid
them.
There was a time where you could say that. Yeah.
That happens when you know somebody long enough. Hey, Mike, I blew a tire. Can you come save me?
Yeah. So I'm not too concerned. But
let's you want to?
Yeah, we could.
Let's do this hand quick, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's only fair that you should get the crib.
Okay, that's crazy.
If we're doing a one hand.
I was just about to ask whose crib it was.
Yeah.
Decisions too, huh?
Oh man.
Right.
I call a misdeal.
My crib too.
Okay, now we want to get as many 14s as possible, right?
15s. 15.
I know.
These are sweet cards, though.
These are really neat, yeah.
I got the old jack-o'-lantern here.
Big red. I'm not even gonna try on the scientific.
Yeah, I can. Oh, the deadly. I got some sweet.
The deadly Gallerina. So you got a 10.
Yeah, I should stop.
I got a big red, if that means anything to you.
Though. Oh, I like how the ones that are poisonous, they put the little poison thing in the corner.
Oh yeah, that's really cool.
The edible ones are good.
Okay, so you no longer need the field guide. You just go out in the woods with a deck of cards.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick up one of these. I didn't know they were educational. Holy shit.
Okay, so, well, unfortunately, there's no other way to open this.
10, huh?
10.
10 for 2.
Big 10. 30.
Go.
10.
20.
25.
Ooh. Or wait, 25. 27, 1 for last card. So I think I'd be up. You'd probably be 1 down the board. I'd be 3 down the board.
I got 1 for the go, and that's it.
Yeah.
I got no other points. You had 2 points.
Plus 1 for last card.
Plus 1. So it's 1 to 3.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll count.
Yeah, I've never tallied cribbage in my head.
So I've got...
Oh, wait, hold on a second. Before you do that, cut the deck. We need to understand what we're playing off of.
Oh, yeah, good call. You know what? Let's do this. We'll do this proper. You cut the deck. 7.
Well, that didn't help.
It's not helpful for me either, so I was just excited I caught a 5. So pair for 2, 15-4, 15-6, 15-8. So I've got a total of 9.
And I got 3 right now. I missed having anything, so I'm still at 3. going to the crib now, everybody. I had nothing in my hand. That was embarrassing. 4, 5, 6, 7.
You got me. 15-2.
Yeah, 15-4.
15-4.
15-6, 15-8.
Oh, yeah. Yep, you got me. You dusted me.
So I think we don't even need to figure out how many I had overall.
That was for the Driftless Glen royalties, so
Yeah.
you'll be earning those for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Look at
This was for fun. Nobody's
even got a yellow
keeping
morel.
track.
I even got a morel. Look at that.
Oh, you did?
The ace.
The ace is the morel. Beautiful.
Yeah, the ace of spades.
I had a puffball. That's the 5.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Well, what did I have?
Oh, you had a puffball too?
Yeah, a different one.
A king. Have you ever eaten?
Oh, you had a giant puffball. I had a common earth ball, non-edible. That's right.
Have you ever
Yes.
eaten a puffball?
Yeah.
Yeah. How is
I don't
that?
like them.
No. Okay.
People talk about them, how they're the breakfast mushroom. I guess have you ever eaten a Mountain House or like some freeze dried food?
Mm-mm.
I guess it would resemble their eggs in there if you were to eat them underhydrated.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's weird how like mushrooms can be so reminiscent of different foods.
I really recommend the dehydrated foods if you're out backpacking though. Like don't think those are low quality.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
All right, we're gonna have to unpack that one next time.
If Mountain House wants to sponsor us.
Oh yeah, we're just gonna keep plugging different everything we know of. San Pellegrino.
I lived off
Vitamin
Mountain House
water.
for literally my 2 weeks out west. So like
Really?
we've bought this podcast has purchased enough Mountain Houses to endorse
Yeah.
us. Like you're not getting ripped off.
Lovely. So, okay, to close this thing up, where do people find you? How do they contact you? Where's the Farmshed, both physically and online?
Farmshed.org. Trevor at farmshed.org. I'm on Instagram. Not a big enough influencer to know my Instagram handle, but I'm there. You can look me up. Farmshed is downtown Stevens Point at the old 1220 Briggs Court. We got the local food fair coming up in May. Like I said, we got an ambitious plan for 2022 education. So you'll have tons of opportunities. You can get a frozen asset CSA. So if you want to extend the summer vegetables all winter long, sign up and get some local organic vegetables once a month.
I'll be signing up just to, put the icing on the cake here. I'll be signing up for one of those.
Excellent. Yeah, I recommend a half share.
Okay.
Recommend your half share your first year so you can kind of like learn how to best cook and best appease your diet, your palate with those vegetables. You'll get 10 different vegetables one time a month, and you'll get 50 pounds. So you get 10 pounds of frozen vegetables a month.
Cool. Yeah, very exciting.
10 different kinds, so you'll kind of like eat your favorite ones really fast and then like learn what you like to cook and get like exploratory with the kitchen. And
that's what I'm excited about. Yeah.
And that's like, I mean, when we're finishing the podcast, next time you have me on, I talk about things. I'll just explain how I think local food drives like your constant excitement in the kitchen, and it never turns into like, oh, I'm just eating steamed chicken and rice, like,
very, very familiar with this meal.
Yeah, right. So local food's another reason why you should, if you're looking to have a healthy diet, it just naturally helps with that variety. But yeah, I recommend that if you're gonna get some frozen assets. So.
Yep, you got it, man. Well, hey, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate you carving out the time. This is a lot of fun for me.
It was a blast.
Let's do it again.
Cool.